On episode 296 of the Tennis Files podcast, you'll learn how to become a complete player with Marc Sophoulis. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the show. I hope you're doing well and playing a lot of tennis and improving your game per usual. Lately, I've been playing some more league matches, a couple wins, a loss. Got one coming up in a couple days as well, so excited about that. But today, I have a really cool interview for you with Coach Marc Sophoulis. I've been going through my archives of interviews, and I found this one and thought that it would be a really good one to share with you that I did a while back. And this one is about how to become a complete player. And we cover a lot of great topics in the interview, such as learning the essential skills that you have to develop to become a well-rounded tennis player, proven tips and strategies to level up your game, important lessons that Marc learned while working with the Bryan Brothers, how tennis coaches can maximize their impact on their players, and much more. So I hope you definitely enjoy this one. So without further ado, here is my interview with Marc Sophoulis.
I just want to start off by asking you, it's always very interesting for me to find out how people got their spark and their passion for tennis. So I want to ask you how you first got into the game, how that came about.
That's a good question. Thank you once again, obviously, for having me. And, it's always a pleasure being on any of your summits and presentations. So, and I do thank a lot of your, fans that obviously send a lot of emails to me and thanking me for my presentation. So hopefully we can a little bit of knowledge to them today. But, tennis for me was, it started many years ago. I was about 3 or 4 years of age. My dad was a very high rated tennis player in our country, I guess, or our state. He played some high level pennant and, he got me into the game and that's where I guess the love of it was, I guess, from the start. But as you go through, I guess you get to points in tennis where it's a brutal game if you're trying to play at the highest level. And, it took me on so many journeys and it's taken me to so many places around the world, but also in my own mind. And it's taught me so many different things that to become a coach for me was one of the most important things, was to teach what the game actually is. And the game of tennis for me is a life lesson, where you're on your own, you have to fend for yourself. And that's what I love about the game is we have to think our way through situations, and life is like that as well. And tennis and life for me are very similar in daily habits and behaviors. So it is a passion of mine. It has been since a young age. And I've loved every minute of it.
Fantastic. And as far as, growing up watching your father play, I mean, was there something that you saw like when he was playing that really got you excited to play the sport as well?
I think I grew up wanting to compete. And I still, at this age, at 38, I still want to compete in everything that I do. And I think I've got myself into watching The Last Dance with Michael Jordan and seeing how competitive he was. But, I had that same sort of fire in my belly. And that for me is one of the things that really excited me about playing a sport on my own, was that I didn't have to rely on anybody else, that I had to really fend for myself and compete at the highest level as hard as I possibly could. And it was only me to blame if I didn't play so well. So and that's what I love about it. It's that competitive edge, and it's something I do miss about obviously now being the age that I am, not being able to compete at any level. I'm more coaching now and trying to get my players to compete. But that's definitely where the fire begun, is that competitiveness.
Yeah. So regarding competitiveness, I mean, a few years ago, I emailed like 70 or so college coaches and I asked them for the most important character traits of college players, which I'm sure applies to pretty much everybody. And they said, competitiveness is really one of the top ones. And so, I mean, how did you and where did you get your competitive spirit from?
I don't know. I feel like I might have been born with that little edge. I hate losing. It doesn't matter what I do. And even I have 2 little kids, and the poor things, they can't beat me in anything, so I won't let them win. But I think it's important to have that competitive nature, and I find it very hard to teach. I think it's something in coaching that I'd love to have a player come to me with a competitiveness, because I think we can teach all the skills in the world, but one thing that is very hard to implement is that competitive nature. So I feel like, that to me is one of the critical components and one of the most important ingredients in the makeup of an elite athlete.
And so you're correct for sure that it's really tough to teach it. But have you tried to instill it in players and seen success? And if so, like what types of things do you actually do to try to instill competitiveness?
Okay, that's a great question. I'm going to give you two answers to it. There's one where you've got to create the environment. I think players, I'm a big advocate that players, coaches don't make players, players make players. And the coach can create an environment where it is conducive for competitiveness. And I feel like that's one way to bring the competitive juices to the table, is to always create that competitive nature in your training sessions. That's probably the first one. The one that I've found I've had a little bit of success with, which I don't recommend all the time, but I have a couple of young kids who have not been so competitive, and I've got them into sort of either martial arts or wrestling or something where they had to compete, and even to the point where I would, have a play wrestle with them or do sort of certain things. And I like to create those fun competitive games, because that to me is the game. You look across the board of all the players on the tour, and they're all different. They're all unique. They all have different stroke production, different technique, different game styles, different personalities. But the one thing they all share is a competitive nature. And it's one thing that I think is a common characteristic across the best athletes in the world, is that competitiveness. And if we can create that in our training in any way that we possibly can, then obviously our athletes are going to learn from the environment, not from the coach, but from the environment that they're put into day in, day out.
Gotcha, Mark. So sometimes I've gotten this type of email from a parent who says, I think my child has a lot of talent, but it just seems like they don't want to, compete and all this. So if we want, or we want their coach to create the competitive environment, what's your approach to that? I mean, like, how much do you introduce in the beginning? Like, do you just go full force, and like what types of competitive things do you have them do and so forth? So any advice would be great.
Yeah, I one of my biggest theories in the game is that everything stems from competitiveness. So if you can get the players to have more of a competing nature in practice, whether it be rallying cross-court forehands, it could be first to, a certain amount, into the deep part of the court, for example. You have cross-court forehands where if they hit it long, it's worth a certain amount of points. Wide is worth. Always have a point system or scoring system on it to make that competitive nature. And tennis is, for me, a decision-making sport. And if we don't have decisions in what we do, then you get to the tournaments or you get to matches and you haven't made enough decisions to be able to, I guess, think your way through it. And, this is why I love tennis so much, is because it's a thinking game. And we have to teach those thinking moments as much as possible. And, so I think everything that we do stems from the competitiveness. And I think we need to play a lot of points, a lot of structures. And then if we need to break down the activity, we can break it down into the technical fundamentals. But everything is always starting from that competitiveness and what actually happens from a tactical perspective.
Awesome, Mark. Really appreciate that insight. And yeah, we see Nick loving it so far. So that's great. Appreciate that, Nick. James as well. So Mark, we talk about, specific actions that we can take regarding helping players become more competitive. But I want to ask you, because you've really been able to, in a sense, supercharge your learning. And, like I said at the top of the show, it's really a pleasure to hear you break things down. So I was wondering your approach to actually learning the game, because it's really important, in all endeavors that we really become students of our craft and to try to continually learn, which is what you do as well. So talk to us about like your methods of learning and any tips you can have to help us also increase our knowledge, and then of course apply that later.
Absolutely. Well, I'm probably the worst learner. So if you had to coach me, you'd probably pull your hair out. I'm not great at learning very well. So what I generally do to learn is I have a quote that I was taught a long time ago by a teacher. And he told me that the person who is doing the talking is doing the learning. Now, that to me rings true, because the way that I learn is I might read something, but then I need to go out and show people or teach people what I just learned to instill the learning. So for 13 years now, I've been a coach educator for Tennis Australia, and I find that's my greatest learning. So I deliver the content given to me. I talk to coaches, they ask me questions, I talk back to them, and I'm reinforcing my learning all the time. And people say to me, oh, you're a great coach educator, or, you love it, you're passionate about it. I do it a lot selfishly as well, because it helps me to learn and to instill my philosophies and my habits in my coaching. So I feel like that when you can learn something and teach it back, it's really important. So obviously, you can do a lot of reading, and there's so much on social media these days to learn from. And hopefully with the Tennis Menu, we can create that as well, where people can watch us and learn. But I think it's not just the reading or the understanding of that. It's going out and practicing it and putting it into your daily habits. And everything you learn isn't gospel for me. You've got to learn something and see if it fits into what you do. See if it fits into your own philosophy, into your own way of coaching, into your own way of being. There's no right or wrong in coaching. It's an opinion. Every single coach out there has an opinion on the game. And you may be seeing the same player play, but you all have a different opinion on what you see. And that's where I feel like there is no wrong answer. Everybody's got an opinion on it, and it's just how to use your opinion and the ideas that you've learned. So go away and learn stuff, but then apply it in bits and pieces. Don't apply everything at once, and see what works for your philosophy and what doesn't. And I guess the other thing is to continually write down what your philosophies are. And that's, for me, a big learning, because then as a coach, it keeps me on track to what I'm trying to develop with my players. If you don't have a clear philosophy, then you find yourself just doing bits and pieces, and you never align to the one outcome that you're trying to achieve. So that's a really important factor for me.
Yeah, love it for sure. Definitely a great tip about if you have to teach something, then you really have to know it inside and out. So that's great. That's a good point by Brad. He says, why force a child to be super competitive if the child isn't interested in competition but wants to just enjoy the game? Sounds pushy. So yeah, that's a good point, right? I mean, is that something you agree with, or?
100%. And there's different levels of the game. And this is where, one of the hardest things about educating others is that we all have to understand that every player is in it for a different reason. Right. So if you're working with a player that wants to go and play competitively and play on the tour for the rest of their life, or that's their career path, obviously it's a different mindset and coaching philosophy as it would be for a player that's in it just for the love of the game, just to hit balls on the weekend, to be with their friends or their families. And I'm going to go on the weekend to have a little hit with my daughter, which I try not to do. I don't want to be coach daddy. I want to be daddy. And I think it's important to go and have fun with that. And, it's about understanding what the outcome is you're trying to achieve. And, if a player wants to be out there for the love of the game, let's make sure they love the game. But if a player wants to go to the highest level, obviously that will change in your philosophy and the way you go about the coaching.
Good stuff, Marc. Yes, I'm curious too about your ascension. I guess that's the right word too. Working with such amazing players. We mentioned especially like the Bryan Brothers and so forth. So, want to ask you, like, when, I guess we'll go through. Okay, maybe like your path. So, when you were first starting to coach, like, what was that environment like for you? What was your first coaching job?
So I started coaching just after probably midway through 14 to 15 years of age. And my coach, who was, he's my mentor to this day. And I still, I'm the head coach of his academy at the Melbourne International Tennis School. Michael Barak gave me an opportunity that you don't get given to you. He was a coach of Maria Sharapova, Marc Philippoussis. And I was basically bred into an environment that was conducive for performance. And I was very fortunate to be in that situation. He gave me, a few roles working with some young kids, and I really enjoyed it. I felt like I could be in the game. I really struggled as a player to handle pressure. That was my biggest downfall, my mindset. And I felt like I could be in the game without having the pressure on me to perform. And I really loved it from that young age. And he gave me the opportunity to continue on in my coaching journey. I still played and went, played a little bit of, futures and so forth after I turned sort of 18, 19. But I continually coached to make the money to be able to continue to play. But I always find, and I look back now, and I guess hindsight is amazing when you can look back and think about your journey. But I think I was born to help others and not myself. And I generally still have that philosophy that I always put others before me. And I think a coach needs to be selfless. I don't consider myself to be a great coach. I want to be that one day. I want to continue to grow and learn. and I'll always continue to do that. But you have to be selfless, and I think I grew in that job and continued to grow, and I have continued to grow because I feel like I give everything that I can to my athletes, and I hope that they feel that genuine care about the way I go about my coaching, because that's obviously the number one priority of a coach, is to genuinely care about the athletes you're coaching.
Love it. Yeah, that's amazing way to say it. And yeah, so as far as working with professional players, I mean, around what time was that, and like how did that, link, so to speak, happen for you?
I love talking about this because I feel like young coaches out there that may listen to this podcast may learn a little bit from it. But the first few years of coaching pro players or being around pro players was for no money. I didn't make anything. I was a hitting partner for some players. I had a couple of young girls that were pretty good that played Australian Open Juniors. I was a hitting partner for them and their coaches. And then it stemmed into one player, which I was very fortunate, Monique Adamczak. I did a little bit of work with her. She's still top 100 in the world in doubles, doing extremely well. Did some work with her. Then she recommended me onto Anastasia Rodionova. And then I started to work with her a bit. And then she had her sister playing on tour. And then I started working with her. And through that, through a couple of injuries, we saw a physio who then knew a couple of players looking for coaches. And then he recommended me. And, I think coaching is one thing that it's word of mouth that is the most important part about being a coach. And obviously, you want people to speak highly of you. You can advertise everywhere. You can put money into banners and products and so forth. But at the end of the day, it's about how people have perceived you and how people you've treated people. And then they can recommend you onto others. And I guess my career snowballed and continued to do that once I basically got into or started working with Anastasia Rodionova, who I'm forever grateful for spending on and off about 8 or 9 years with, and an Arena Rodionova with the same amount of time. And they taught me so much about coaching on the pro tour, and they teach you so many things, and then you sort of work. And I had a great opportunity to work with Victor Hanescu, who was 27 in the world, playing Hopman Cup for Romania. And spent a few years with him, and it was just amazing that I feel as a coach that the players teach us more than we will ever teach them. I think it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of understanding individual people, and then it's also building a strong relationship. And that's become part of my philosophy, is if you don't have that trust and relationship with your athlete, you could have all the knowledge in the world, but they just won't listen. And, that's obviously a big chunk about being a professional coach, is you've got to build that rapport with every athlete you have. And that's what I found so intriguing about the Pro Tour, is you're always working with different players, and they're all different personalities with different strengths, different weaknesses, different ways of going about their life. And you have to fit into what they do, and you have to find a way, and you have to be a chameleon in that, and then be able to fit into them, and they're not fitting into you. So, coaching has changed, and I feel like it's no longer go back 20 years. It was a dictatorship, I think, where coaching was the coach always coming down to the athlete. And now it's, the athlete and coach are working hand in hand to create everything together, and it's a collaboration.
Love it, Marc. And so I think you answered, a lot of this question, but I guess I'll ask if there's anything else in regards to you mentioned that you've learned so much, and that the coaches learn so much from the players. So is there anything, else specifically that you can remember that you've taken from learning through working with these pros that you still use today?
Yeah, it's probably two things. So one is listen to your player. Your player knows more than you as the coach. They feel every single little thing that they're doing on the court. We can only see. So that's probably the most important part, is listen to them and then bring your eyes to their feelings. And that's the most important part about coaching, is the listening side of it. And secondly is that success leaves footprints, and the best players in the world give us the footprints to achieve success. Now, watching, the best players in the world, and I've had opportunities to be on court with obviously the Bryan Brothers, who are not only amazing tennis players, but just amazing people. And just to learn about, the way that they go about life as well as tennis. But their training habits, even at their age now, is just second to none. Their preparation, pre-training, post-training, the way that they go about their intensity on the court, the way they work hard, it's an amazing thing to watch. And I'll give you one story about Victor Hanescu, which I also felt was a really big learning curve. Is the best players just won't go to bed until they're satisfied with what they've achieved on that day. And I remember Victor, would have been 2011 maybe, or 12. He was playing, he injured himself with the Hopman Cup. And we came back to Melbourne and he had to bypass Sydney to be ready for the Australian Open. He wasn't happy with his backhand. And we actually spent one night, I remember about 2.5 or 3 hours on literally hitting backhands only because he'd missed this one shot that he just wasn't happy with in the previous tournament. And he just wouldn't stop until he got it right. And I think it's a really important factor is that you don't practice something till you get it right. You practice it till you can't get it wrong. And he was an advocate for that. And he literally just taught me so much about, it's a matter of just spending time, so much time to get your habits so spot on. And, it's a game of millimeters at times. And we need to be meticulous in our preparation. And, he was sitting up at night, watching videos that I took of his training. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons is the best athletes are just hungry for success and they just, won't sleep. And that's one of the most important learning curves I felt. And that's why I always talk about, competitiveness is not only just on the court, it's also off the court and being competitive in yourself to better yourself, on a day-to-day basis.
Really love that, just talking about the commitment of the athlete to succeed. And actually, I think it was yesterday, I have this habit of working out when I'm indoors to different motivational channels. And so there was one where I think it was Jason Williams. He was talking about how he had a game against Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. And then before the game, several hours before the game, Jason went to go get some reps in and he saw Kobe already practicing. And then, Jason practiced for like an hour or so and then Jason left and then Kobe was still practicing. And then after the game, Jason went up to Kobe and said, "Hey man, I'm just wondering why do you practice for that long before the game?" And he said, because I knew you were practicing. So I just wanted to show you that I'm going to work harder than you no matter what. And so, it's a similar vein of just really showing that you need to be competitive and committed and work hard. There's no substitute. So really appreciate that.
Yeah. And I think to add to that is, the best players have belief. Now, belief doesn't come from, one day you wake up and you have this confidence in yourself. Belief comes from working hard. Belief comes from getting the time on the practice court. Belief comes from being strong enough, fit enough, fast enough. And if you can't continually do more than your competitors, then you can't believe that you've done more work than them. So when it gets to that fifth set, you can see Roger, Rafa, Novak just know that they have the edge. And it's amazing when you put the work in, the belief comes.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I might have heard you talk about this concept recently, Marc. And, it's just like there's a facility near us called Junior Tennis Champion Center, and their slogan is trust your training. So imagine, going out on the court and then having a match against somebody and not having trained. And then you're telling yourself, trying to use whatever techniques or mental techniques, but you haven't trained, you haven't put in the work. So how can you have that sort of confidence if you haven't put in the work? So I really like that, Marc. And I listen to your content. It's good stuff, man. So there's some questions here, Marc. Let's see. There's one from Samantha. How about managing competitive play when you are playing with people who might not be on your level so that you don't lose your competitive edge? Any thoughts on that, Marc?
A great question. I guess from a coaching perspective, we putting, scoring systems that create competitiveness, even if you're playing below or above your level. So, for example, there's a scoring system we use where it's a pressure point system. So every time you get to 3, if you lose on a 3, 6, 9, anything multiple of 3, you drop down to the previous score. So if I'm 3-0 up against mehrban and I lose the point, I drop down to 0, he goes to 1. And then if we get to 6 and I lose, if I'm on 6 and I lose, I go back to 3. If I'm on 3 and I lose, I go back to 0. So you have an up and down scoring system where you can't rest on your laurels and you have to continually compete. And I feel like that's one way of doing it. And the other way we do is we start points off where the the player who loses the point gets to feed and choose wherever they want to feed the ball. And basically then you can always have, if the person is not up to your level, they're feeding to you in a defensive situation from the start, and you have to learn to defend from that situation. So I guess that's one way of doing it. You could also manipulate your scores in matches. So you might start at love 30 down. You might start at, love 15. You might only have one serve instead of two serves every time you play them. And I think that then adds a little bit more competitiveness, because then you have to fight for every point. I used to play against some guys sometimes that didn't probably have the level, and you have to manipulate the scoring to make it competitive so you can get something out of your session.
Yeah. Those games where you manipulate the score are really, really helpful in your training and putting more pressure on yourself and all that to simulate match situations. So there's a question about the Rodionova sisters. I'm not sure if I want to read the exact language, but what was your experience like? I mean, were there certain things that you had to change in your style of coaching or anything like that while working with them?
I think when you work with any athlete, you've got to adapt, as I said before, to them and their style and their learning. And they are the most unbelievable competitors in the world. Like, there was one thing you never have to ask the girls to do was to compete. And obviously that was their one wood. They took their one wood out on the tee and they competed as amazingly hard. And look, I guess at times it becomes challenging because they are so competitive that, maybe sometimes, when you're coaching as any player, you have differing opinions. And, it's always a challenge when you coach any athlete, but they were amazing. And I owe a lot to them because they taught me so much about coaching. And, they took me on their journey, and I'm so grateful to be on, players' journeys like that. And, they are great people off the court. We had an amazing relationship off the court. And actually, Arena and her husband met at my wife's 30th birthday. So they're still together to this. So it's been a great connection over many years.
Very cool. Very cool. And yeah, I guess to dig a little deeper as far as this can even apply to parents as well. But when you have a competitive player, what adjustments do you make? And, what is really the key to be able to get through to them despite, maybe their competitive spirit kind of taking over and things like that?
Yeah, and I guess that's a really important question because they're always thinking about the win. And the one thing that we as coaches need to continue to teach is the process. And that's always hard when you've got someone that just wants to win every point, but they're doing it probably the wrong way because they're in their own head. They've got 1,000,001 thoughts going on at one time. And it's a matter of trying to condense their thoughts into simplistic processes that they can, I guess, calm themselves down when they need to, but also allow themselves to get to a certain arousal level during a point or during a match. So they're all the sports psychology tips. And I guess, you talked about, learning and education. I'm really big on the mindset. And I try to learn as much as I can about the mindset because at the end of the day, every thought creates an action. And, we can't act without a thought first. So as a coach, one of my other ways of coaching and philosophy is to teach the thoughts before the actions. And if you can coach through the thoughts, then those players, even though they may be really competitive, they still understand when to calm themselves down, how to do that, and how to refocus their energy back on the process.
So yeah, let's dig into that a little bit. So regarding the mindset, let's take a amateur tennis player because most of the individuals watching are 3-0 to 4-5, some 5-0s, also some coaches too. But where do we begin? Let's say we're a player that we have a lot of trouble in tight matches. We have certain confidence issues. Where would you advise that the player begins in terms of trying to change their mindset and become a better player, especially with the mind?
Yeah, I guess that's a really good point because it's all levels of the game. This is the same question, whether you're, a lower level recreation amateur player or you're a pro. I think we all have the same issues. And it's about, again, I'll go back to the real simplistic part of it. It's about a process. Now, you've got to understand your strengths. One of the big things about a lot of players, regardless of whether you're down the bottom as a beginner or you're up the top as a pro, is you have to understand what you're really good at. A lot of tennis players, if you get coaching, regardless of what coach you go to, a lot of us coaches, we generally talk in the negative and we always work on things that are not going well for the player. But what is going well? what is your go-to shot? What is your go-to play in the big moments? And I think the best players in the world understand what their go-to plays are, what their go-to structures are. So that helps you to reduce the stress level, to reduce the anxiety level, because you know that you can serve the ball wide. You've done it a million times before, and you love to run around your forehand. And on the big points, you've got to utilize that. And I think if you can understand your strengths as a whole, then you'll be able to reduce that total anxiety when you play and build confidence in your game. So it's a very easy to think about, very hard to do, but I think it's important to understand and get someone to tell you what you're good at. And that one thing for me is, a lot of the kids that I coach, the young kids, a lot of the people that give them feedback on their game, tell them what they're not good at or what they didn't do well in the match. But what did you do well? And I think it's important to have, and I call it a recipe for success. Build up the things that always work for you and always turn to those things in the time of pressure or the time of need. Whether it's the slice serve out wide on the juice side, if that always works for you on the big moments at 30-all juice, go it. I think it's important to have those strategies in your repertoire and in your game plan and your toolkit. So when the moments come, you know what works for you.
Got it. That's amazing. So, and this could be potentially really groundbreaking for a lot of players. So, so another way of saying it is just to try to figure out, okay, what is my biggest strength or strengths in my game? And then to try to construct each point so that you can use that strength as much as you can against the weaknesses. Is that kind of
absolutely spot on? Okay. Absolutely spot on. And at the end of the day, players that you play against in a match may know where you're going to serve the ball in the big moments because you've always done it, but they still need to execute their ball back. So I wouldn't worry so much about what your opponent is doing because you can't control them. All you can control is what you do. And I think if you can make your ball and play to your strengths, then it doesn't matter what the opponent tries to do. They'll play a good point every now and again. We have to understand that it's a 50-50 ball game every time we step up to the line. So, at the end of the day, play to your strengths, go out in the court and just literally just focus on what you can control and let's see what happens from that.
Love it. Try to shift back to you working with, great professional players, which dream of a lot of coaches. I want to dig a little bit into what types of things you learned from the Bryan brothers as well. And then also maybe if there's anything that they have changed, throughout their careers that you might suggest that we also maybe apply to our games and the way we approach things as well.
The amount I learned from these guys is amazing. And it was just, the moment I met them, to meet people that I'd idolized for so long in the way that they go about tennis and life. And it's almost the same story as the Ionescu story, where I remember being at the Australian Open and they were preparing for matches. And I was one that would serve a lot to the guys, being, their coach, Dave McPherson, who's an amazing guy, amazing coach. He's a lefty and I'm the righty, and I used to serve as the righty to the players. And I reckon it was one day I served for about an hour and a half straight. My arm wanted to fall out of its socket. But because they wanted their return to be just so spot on for their match play. And it's just those meticulous habits of behavior that is really important to understand if you want to be good at something. Is there's no substitute for hard work. And they just, epitomize hard work. They'd be on the court, in 40-degree heat at the middle of the day. And I would sit there and go, well, do you really need to be on the court at this time? I can't really last too long out here in this heat. But they just had such a work ethic and such a want to get better. And that was probably the one thing from an on-court perspective. But on an off-court perspective, the way that they treated the fans. I think it's a lesson in life for all of us that we need to treat people the way that we want to be treated. And I know it's a really old saying, and probably our mums and dads taught us this as well. But they just treat everybody like they mean the world to them. And I think as human beings, as society, if we can improve the way that we treat everybody, and, I'm always about giving people time. So, when people message me from your summit, I give them the time of day. I write a personalized email every single time. And I'm hoping that it connects with people that I cherish your thoughts, and I want you guys to talk to me. And I hope I can learn. I've learnt from the Bryan brothers, obviously, that's the way of being in life, not just on the court, but off the court as well. So and just preparation, and that's obviously, again, a life and tennis lesson. If you prepare well, no matter what it's for, whether it be a match, whether it be, for, a work presentation you're going to do or a school exam, your preparation is the most important part. And they spend the most amount of time on preparation before training. They finish training and they're off the court doing their recovery and their gym and ice bath or whatever it might be for, a heap of time afterwards. So, I think looking at the best players, they prepare well, they work harder than anybody else, and they're just grateful for being where they are and in the situation they're in, that they can impact people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. I try to expose myself to people who are spreading the message of hard work and vision and things like that. And it's really a struggle with a lot of people, myself included. When you have these goals and then all of a sudden there's a lot of distractions, or maybe you don't have a clear vision. So I've heard and seen that it's really having clear vision in mind for what you want to accomplish, and then having your whys very close at hand to when you get to that almost a breaking point where I can either work out or I can eat some Cheetos on the couch. You try to remember your why, like, I need to work out because I want to become a 5-0 player or something, so some sort of goal like that. So I can really appreciate that you have brought that up, and that you've learned that type of mentality from the Bryan brothers, and you have it yourself as well. So I mean that's really, really great. So Samantha has a kind of a clarifying question. Interesting. So I guess she asked a previous question. She said, I kind of more so meant not getting discouraged by others. Especially as a woman who might feel like they might not want to come off as being competitive, even though it's fine. So, I mean, Marc, do you think that Samantha should, I don't know how to term this, but basically go down to the level of, I'll just, act fun, or, just have fun? Or should I just be my own person and just compete, no matter what they think?
Yeah, it's a great question, Samantha. I think ways to look at it, but at the end of the day, if you're there to get yourself better, I mean, I would encourage you to do whatever it takes to get better. Obviously, when you've got others on the court that may want to be more of a fun environment, maybe they're not the right people for you to be practicing with. I think it's important to choose your practice partners wisely. Maybe they're the ones you go and enjoy your tennis with and have a bit of fun, but then you go and select others to really take you to a new level. It's a good question. It's obviously something that in tennis, it's very hard to find someone that is going to challenge you all the time, and you've got to play up and down. And I give that advice to a lot of our kids as well. You've got to play up and down all the time to challenge yourself, and it's not always about playing the best players. It's about, how you play people at your level and people below you as well. And it's a learning curve for us all, but I'm not sure the right answer for you, Samantha. I hope I've been able to give you something, but you seem like you're a very competitive person. So I hope you get what you want, but find people that challenge you the most that you can.
Yeah, no, I think you gave a great answer there, Marc. I mean, you don't want to, you can do that once in a while, but if you feel in deep inside that I'm competitive, I want to compete, I want to train hard, and then you have like 3 of these sessions a week with people who don't want to compete, that's not really the best fit for you. So I really, I think that Marc's answer was great about finding more instances and more people that will challenge you. And then maybe once in a while you could play with them and things like that. So it's very important, your environment and who you expose yourself to. And, it's old saying that you're the product of the 5 people you spend time with the most. So great stuff there, Marc. So Lance, for sure. And Lance has a question about here. I think it is amazing how some players are able to hit the ball both left-handed and right-handed. I know a few of those. How does a coach decide which way the player should hit at the start of his or her career?
That's a good question, Lance. It's quite interesting because my little daughter does a bit of both, and I just allow her to experiment, really. I think the coach, and look, there's certain times where coaches need to make decisions on certain things, but I'm a big advocate of allowing what's natural in individuals and not pigeonholing them into one or the other. But, I think Rafa is a right-hander, which is quite interesting that his uncle made him a lefty. So, I think there's pros and cons for doing, both. But I guess what they generally do most of their stuff with, I would say, I would choose if they were throwing right-handed, you'd probably keep them right, because it's very hard to teach service actions unless they have a good throwing action. And the serve these days is a critical component. So if there's one or the other, I would probably say that would be how I would sway it. But at the end of the day, I think over time, kids especially will develop one way or the other, and they'll probably come to the answer more than we need to probably push them into one way or the other.
Yeah, great advice there. It's critical to have a good throwing motion on the serve. Getting back a little bit back to the Bryan brothers, I was curious if there's a ton of players obviously who are playing doubles who are listening to this and watching this, and especially with the USA leagues in the US and probably in Australia too, playing a lot of doubles. So what is maybe like one or two double strategies that you see the Bryan brothers employ in matches that you think can be really helpful for us just to keep in mind to try out?
Yeah, good question. I guess without giving away secrets, but
Yeah.
doubles, look, at the end of the day, doubles is a pretty simple game. It's about two things. One really is communication and connection. If you don't have that communication and connection between you and your partner, then you better be looking for a new partner, because it's one game that is so important to understand one another and to be able to trust one another. And the one thing that Bob and Mike have is amazing trust. I know they're twins, I know they're brothers, and it's obviously a bit easier, but it can be quite hard as well if you're playing with siblings. So, they have an amazing chemistry on the court, and it's about understanding each other's strengths and also masking each other's weaknesses as well. And I think good doubles teams do that. I've been delivering quite a substantial doubles workshop in Australia for the last 12 months. I did a bit of a roadshow around the country, and this was my biggest point. One of my other jobs is that I'm a football coach, an Australian football coach, and we work with a team of 22 players on any given day to play together. Now, every player in their individual right has amazing talent, amazing technique, amazing this and that, but without chemistry, you have no team. And it's all about creating team in everything you do. So understanding who should serve first, understanding who should return from certain points. I think it's the critical component of doubles. We all know how to hit a forehand, a backhand, a serve. We know how to volley. That's not the challenging part of doubles. The challenging part is, where is my partner? Where are they serving? Where do I need to move to? Where are they going to move? And be able to have that cohesion on the court. And that's without doubt one of the most important parts about doubles. And if there's one tactical part, I guess, is cover the middle and make sure the middle of the court is not exposed. Do not ever let a ball go through the middle of the court. Let's force the players to play through the lines, through the doubles alleys, and ensure that they're bringing an element of another way of making an error. So, there's only three ways of making an error: net, long, and wide. The most important part is to bring as many of those into your opponent's eyes as you can. So if you leave the middle available, they have the lowest part of the net. They have no ability to hit wide. So I think it's important for us to bring that element into the game, is make them play through the doubles alley and cause them to make more errors than they're hitting winners.
Yeah, exactly. Beautiful point. I mean, I can remember certain teams where they've been so solid through the middle against our groundies, and my stomach has dropped to just saying, like, it's going to be a long day. We're going to have to hit these crazy angled winners, or low percentage shots where the net's higher. So, great stuff there, Marc. Appreciate that. So this one is interesting question from Peter here, two-parter here, but and I don't know how much you've studied our great United States philosophies here, Marc, but Peter is asking, can you differentiate Tennis Australia from USTA's player development philosophies? So I don't know, how much you can.
Yeah, I don't know much about the USTA philosophy. I know one of the biggest things, Peter, is that everybody is unique in their own philosophy. And look, at the end of the day, I think it comes down to the person in front of you shapes your philosophy. So, as a coach, I have my philosophy that is strong, but each player needs something different. And I think it's important to create your own philosophy and not to follow others. So, every federation will have a way of coaching, a way of teaching certain things. And it's great for us to look at every bit of content from our national body and take it, but you need to mold it into what fits into you and what fits into your players. And I'm not all over the USTA philosophy. I know Tennis Australia have some great content that we teach, and I think it's amazing. But I think every nation has amazing content. It's not what you do; it's how you do it, though. And you grab the content, and it's what you do with that bit of content that's the most important. And if there's anything I can advise you to do, it's to grab everything that you like, and I like to use it as making a cake. Grab all your ingredients, put it into your bowl, mix it up, and then put whatever flavoring you want to put into it to make your cake. And that, to me, is the most important part about taking philosophies. There's no one philosophy that's right, and there's no one philosophy that's wrong. There's certain players that have been amazing coming out of Australia. There's some certain players out of America that have been amazing. Canada are doing amazing things with their players. Italy has come through the last 12 to 18 months and are just flying. So I think if you can take the best out of everything and put it into your mixing bowl and then create your own flavor to it, to me, that's the best philosophy you can have.
That's right, Marc. That's really great advice. Just don't eat too much cake, before your matches. That's the only thing. So I want to ask you a bit about becoming a complete player. And we obviously did address, a really important part, which is the mental aspect. But, going back to the example of the player who is kind of like in a rut, so to speak, where they feel like they have some technical issues to hammer out, as an amateur player, also some mindset, aspects, and, even some physical, they're hurting, things like that. So what's the approach to becoming a more complete player? Like, how should we approach this type of situation?
Okay, yeah, probably a couple of answers to that. I think I can go down the path of. One is, and I know you use the word rut, but I always say to my players, you can't go from playing really well to not playing well in the space of 24 hours or a week or whatever. There's no such thing as playing worse. Your level of play never reduces. It's only the belief in the level of your play. So sometimes we think situations are worse off than they really are. And you're on the court and you're like, oh, my forehand's just not working now. Well, hang on, it was working 5 minutes ago. It wasn't your forehand. It may be what you're trying to do with your forehand, or what the opponent is trying to do to you, or where you're trying to play the ball, how you're trying to play it there, or you've just gone negative in the situation and it's become tight. It might be a mindset. Your feet stop moving because you're in a mindset rut. And I think it's never as diabolical as we all think. We always look at it and go, it's so bad, things are not going well. But I think it's important for us to understand that everything can be turned around with a mindset. So that being said, I feel like tennis is about holistic training. We all think that to get better, we need to be on the tennis court. And through COVID-19, I'm a huge advocate of, I've been coaching kids online. Our school training we've done every day has been an online platform that we have been doing physical sessions, mindset sessions. We've been doing nutrition sessions. We've had special guest speakers. We've watched tactical things and taught them through that. How much of the time do we spend, because we take it for granted, just on the court, just hitting balls, pointless hitting? I think it's important to have a structure to creating a holistic athlete, and your training should revolve around the holistic part of the game and not just hitting a tennis ball without any purpose. So, I hope that answers the question, because I feel like there's a two-pronged attack to it. Nothing's ever as bad as it seems. And if we want to make things better, we need to be holistic athletes and holistic players as opposed to one-dimensional.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense there. And so, how do you allocate time? Say if you have several different areas that you really need to improve upon and we want to take the holistic approach, like, do you just allocate according to like the priority that gets the most time, and then you give smaller chunks to the others, or is there some other approach?
It's a great question. Again, I think it's a very individualized thought process. I generally prioritize for that individual in front of me as a coach what needs to be done. Now, as a coach, you look at it and you might have a player that comes in 1 hour a week. And to get a holistic approach in 1 hour a week is going to be quite. You what the priorities are for that player. And generally, I prioritize two things in particular. One is serve, one is return. Okay, if we're not prioritizing serve and return in all of our practice and the +1 ball, we're not practicing to play better matches. We're just practicing for the sake of doing that. If you want to improve your game, the serve and return is the most important element of the game. So that needs to be prioritized without fail. And then obviously you want to, make sure you're grooving the ground strokes because you need confidence in the off the ground kind of stuff. And if you're a net player, you'd probably prioritize coming forward. So I think it's important to first and foremost put in your serve and return, and then everything else around that can be put into individualized for the player that you got in front of you.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, if I could go back in time, I would just really prioritize my serve and return too. Just unbelievably important. So, and we're definitely going to obviously talk about really exciting again the launch of the tennis menu, which is going to be great, and highly encourage everybody to check that out. So one other question before we do that about just improving your game. What are a couple of the biggest mistakes that you see amateur tennis players making? And that could be in any sort of environment, or, whether it's a match or practice, habits, anything like that you could maybe point out that might resonate with us that we could then change.
Yep. Purposeful practice is definitely the one that stands out to me. That I had even players that I coach and I educate daily go on the practice court yesterday and just hit up and down the middle for 1 hour. And I said to them, guys, what's the purpose of what you're doing? I just want to find rhythm. Okay, for what reason? Are you aiming for depth? Are you aiming for height? Are you aiming for shape? Something needs to be the focus of your session. So that to me is one of the most important parts. So have a really strong purpose and clarity as to what you want to try and achieve on the practice court, because that will then help you to shape your matches better. And the other thing is preparing well. Don't go on the practice court if you haven't warmed up. And we think warm up is just, a little bit of a jog and roll the arms over and whatever else. But a warm up is mental and physical. You're preparing yourself to achieve at the highest level that you possibly can. So get there 20 minutes, 30 minutes early. Prepare your body, prepare your mind. Talk to your practice partner about what you want to try and get out of the session. If it's 1 hour session, make sure that every minute counts. I think there's no point practicing if you're looking to improve your game without a purpose and without a goal. None of the best players do that. And, they leave the footprints for us to continue on towards. So, just have a strong clarity as to what you want to achieve.
Love it. And speaking of that preparation, assuming that none of these pros will get mad at us for divulging, or you can make a combination of routines. I was wondering, what if you could take us through a routine that a professional tennis player goes through themselves before a match.
Yeah. And that's the one thing that I wish I could have a GoPro on my head to show you what the players are doing pre-match, because to sit in the cafe of the Grand Slams and to watch different players, I've watched so many players, and Roger Federer is my idol. I just love Roger. And I'm on the table next to him, preparing for a match, and he likes to be just kind of relaxed and chilled out for a few hours, eat his dinner, be with the family and so forth. Some players will sit in the corner and not speak to anybody. Some players won't even be in the cafe. They'll be on their own. But I think it's important, I guess, a few hours before you play is to have a really good meal. Obviously, it's a really important factor to fuel yourself up for the match, to obviously be in your space and what you need to be doing. It might be with your favorite music on, and to make sure that you're relaxed or calm, or trying to rev yourself up a little bit before your match. They then go through a warm-up. Most players do between a 30 to 45-minute warm-up, before they play. And it all depends. They might be just riding the bike. And I love sitting in the gym at the Australian Open, and you've got these bikes that are all lined up, and you've got the TVs in front of you, and the players have got their earphones in. They're in their match outfit. They're riding their bike. And it's like about a set into the match before they're about to play. So they're just waiting for that match so that they can get ready to play. And they start to see that the match is going in one direction. They go, okay, I'm going to get ready to play. And then the match flips, and then it goes to 3 sets, and they have to stop their warm-up. And it's quite interesting to watch it over a 2 or 3 hour process of a player starting and stopping warm-ups. And I really love that, because it's a game that we just never know when we're going to be on the court. So But I think it's important to have a good meal, warm yourself up to the best that you possibly can. That includes, moving. It includes TheraBand for your shoulders to upper body activation. It might include some rotation of medicine balls. It might include some tactical thoughts with your coach, okay, to go over what you want to do and have a plan in place. And then obviously the players have individual needs. So some of the players I've worked with in the past want to talk to you as a coach and have fun and just relax their mind. Other players are like, leave me alone. And you've got to understand what they need. And I had a great story of Victor Hanescu was about to play Leighton Hewitt at the Hopman Cup. And we were underneath the arena. And Victor was a very calm guy. He's a 6'6" giant that is the most placid, calm guy. And we were just, doing some TheraBand, nice and relaxed, waiting for our match to go on. And Leighton Hewitt was with his boxing coach 5 meters away, beating the hell out of him with the boxing gloves. And it was like the most intimidating, 20 minutes of our preparation. And Victor looked at me like, wow, what do I do here? I think he's going to kill me, not play against me. And I said, it's okay. It's all cool. We'll be fine. So everybody's so individual in what they need in preparation. It's important to prepare the way you need to play your match.
Love it. So maybe if you don't know what you need to, your intensity and relaxed or to get hyped up, maybe you try getting hyped up before one match, and then you stay more relaxed before another, and then you see which one works better maybe a few times. Is that
100%?
Okay.
I think preparation is trial and error, and then write down what works for you so then you can create your recipe for success. And the more you write it down, the more it becomes evident for the things that you need. And then write down the things that have really not worked for you. You might be too tired before your match because you've done a 45-minute warm-up and you can't last for 10 minutes in the match. So, write that down that, probably not physically ready to do that. So, write your pros and cons, and then you come up with your success recipe to take into a match.
Got it. Awesome, Marc. I'm going to sneak this question in real quick. So Jay asks, do you have any technical advice on how to track and hit a ball with that tricky lefty spin? Any tips on that?
If there's someone that wants to talk about lefties, it's not me, because my dad was a lefty and he killed me every time.
Oh, dang.
But no, look, any kind of tracking activity, I think, at the end of the day, take away the fact that they're left-handed and focus more on the ball. And I think we play the ball, we don't play the opponent more often than not. And I think it's important to understand when the opponent is striking the ball, that is your cue to split step. When the ball is bouncing, that is your cue to have your racket at the take back of your swing. And then that should be able to align your cues for your racket pathway. And if you have a few cues that you utilize, might be impact, bounce, and then your contact, and that makes it really simple for your mind to process, and it makes it simple for your body to adhere to.
Love it, Marc. So I want to, obviously educate the audience about, what you're up to and the latest project. So can you tell us a little bit about the purpose of the tennis menu, which is launching very soon, and obviously let us know when that's launching also?
Of course. The tennis menu is a 4-year process. Well, actually it's more. It's probably a 24-year process of me collating all my ideas with a great friend of mine and a partner in crime, Nick Gissing, who's incredible at putting it together for me. I'm a coach, and he's the person who puts it together for me. And look, it's been going for 4 years in terms of developing the content and developing the website and getting that ready to go. And it was started as actually a process of literally we wanted to look at it as a basically putting together all the ideas of coaching. And then it wasn't aimed to be as big as it was. And we kept growing it and growing it and growing it over the time. And basically it's going to be a one-stop tennis shop. And you'll have, at the moment, we have 600 on-court technical interventions to create better technique at the moment. So they're all filmed. They're all in video form. We give you the description of the drill, the reasons why you do it, how you do it, the focus of the drill, whether it be technical, tactical, physical, mental, perception or reception skills. We also we're going to have a holistic program of strength and conditioning, mindset, nutrition. We've got a data analyst who does all of our data, and we break down what the game is telling us to how we need to practice. We have a flexibility coach who is going through flexibility, mobility activities to help prepare you and your body for optimal performance. We're going to have webinars, plenty of online stuff to be able to learn from. And it's been a collation of ideas over so many years, and I'm so glad I wrote down a lot of the ideas I had early on in my coaching, and I encourage anybody to do that as well. And we've been able to put it down. And look, we're launching with a great product in the next. We'll go live this weekend, so our website will be live for people to be able to look through and have a look at. And then we're going to have a launch within the next few weeks. So it's really exciting. So basically, we're just looking at, we're sending it all out to all of our subscribers. So, if you go to the tennismenu.com and you put your details in, we'll notify you of when everything is up and running, and we'll send you emails. Actually, talking about the Bryan Brothers, they gave a fantastic testimonial. I'm so honored to have a testimonial from the best doubles team of all time. Of to get out there and to be on the tennis menu. And Cara Black's another one who I've done a little bit of work with in the past, and she's given a great testimonial for me. And I'm just so grateful for the players that I've been involved with, because at the end of the day, the players make us as coaches. You guys give us a job, and I thank every single player that I've ever worked with, because it doesn't matter if you're a high level or low level, you've helped create me as a coach. And obviously creating me as a coach has been able to help me create this content. And over the years, I've collated all these ideas, and I wanted to pass them on, because there's no good me going to my grave one day and it's all stuck in my head. Exactly. Important for us tennis people to share our knowledge. And I'm not out there to compete with anyone. I'm out there to share, and that's basically what I've aimed to do. And that's what we've aimed to do with our product, is to share with everybody that tennis can be taught anywhere, can be learnt online, and you can have so many ways of learning the game, and we're hopefully going to give you a great platform to do that.
Love it. And then, so as far as, the types of players and people who the website, who the tennis menu would help serve, I mean, what subsects sects would that be? Would that be like players or coaches, parents? Like, who would that best serve?
Hit the nail on the head. It's coaches, players, and athletes is our three areas. And we're going to have athlete seminars, parent, and coaching, where we can educate all three platforms in their own way. It's also, people say, is it from a recreational or performance? Development is any level, and we've got development drills for everything. So you'll see drills on there that can be taught from 5 years of age to an adult recreational player to a pro tour player. And we're starting off with our technical product at the moment, where it's all interventions based on creating the best techniques possible. And then we're going to add tactical drills and formats and doubles and etc. And there's so many things we're going to get to people that, I'm just so excited to be able to share it, because for so long I've just kept it inside me. And now it's important that I can share it out there. And whatever level you are, whatever coach or parent or athlete, will have, ways to be able to connect with us as well. And as I said at the start, I'm very open to people connecting with me, and I really, I love what people bring me, because it teaches me also. So, if anyone's out there and you're listening to this, and I hope there is someone listening to me today, but I'm more than happy to answer questions, because I think that's, tennis, the high end of the game has always been hard to get hold of. It's hard to get hold of the best players and understand what they're doing, but I'm hopefully able to bring that to people's doorsteps.
That's really cool, Marc. And so it sounds like you have a great team, as part of this, and you have several different aspects that you're going to help players to work on, whether that's their, fitness, technique, strategy, all sorts of things. So that's really exciting. And then, so you said that we can basically go right now to the tennismenu.com and then to basically sign up, and then we'll get notified when everything opens up, right?
Yeah, spot on. So if you just go to tennismenu.com, basically you'll go there and you can just click to register your details. And I think we just got a submission come through there, which is fantastic. Hopefully it's someone from here, but thanks so much for that. But yeah, if you go on there and put your details in, we're going to update people when everything's going to launch. We sent our first email out on this week to notify people that we are about to launch the product, to be sort of keep their ear to the ground, because it's coming. And look, it's a fantastic thing for me, because I've just been so excited and to be able to get my knowledge out there. And as I've mentioned today, like, so many stories, and I want to be able to go on and talk to people about the stories you learn through coaching, through tennis, and the journey in life that it takes us on. And if I can help you to be a better person as well as a better player, that's my goal. So hopefully we can achieve that through the tennis menu, and give people some real positive tennis vibes.
Yeah, I mean, Marc is, one of the most genuine coaches that you'll meet, and really respect his work. So definitely, he really cares about the players, and coaches and everybody who he works with. So that's really a testament to the great job that you're doing and the passion. So Marc, we got some more questions here. We have Samantha. Do you suggest keeping a tennis notebook?
That is a good question, and is a spot on. Because you do need to keep one.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have a great tennis journal coming out pretty shortly. So basically,
Nice.
I've created a journal which I thought over time has information based on the habits you need as an athlete on a regular basis, what you need to do, creating a recipe for your success. So we basically got areas where you can write down the things that are working on the court for you. And at the end of your journal, you can put in what your recipe looks like. And that'll be, in our store to be able to purchase as well, to be able to get hold of. And you can utilize that as a journal, but absolutely take as many notes as you can. As a coach, it's funny because I hate being on my phone when I coach, but I always write notes. And I always write notes about things that I've said to players or things that I've done that have worked, because I feel like I need to continue to create my recipe. And if you're a player out there or coach or a parent, continue to create recipes for success, and you can make your best chocolate cake possible.
Delicious. Again, not before a match. We've got Gene here with a very nice comment. You're what a good coach should be, able to relate to and help all levels of players. Your enthusiasm is wonderful.
Thank you.
Agree. Awesome. Thanks, Gene.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Just a couple more questions for you, Marc. Let me know if you have to take off, but
no, all good.
Awesome. So for coaches, you've given us some great advice for both players and coaches. What are a couple mistakes that you see coaches make, and then how should they go about fixing them?
Oh, that's a really good question. I see a lot of coaches that try to control everything. And, at the end of the day, the player themselves will be unique in their own way. We can't control their makeup, their personal characteristics, but we can create a really great environment for them to be in. And I think life's about environment, right? So, I have two young kids, 5 and 3. The environment I create at home is going to shape the way that they become in the future. And it's no different to being a coach or a teacher. If you create the right learning environment that's positive, that promotes success, that helps you become the best you can possibly be, that is not critical. You've got to have some sort of critical components, but it's constructive criticism that's important. And I think the feedback and the way we give it is really critical. So language is another one for coaches to really watch. Don't do this, don't do that is not going to help a player. What do you want a player to achieve is more, don't hit the ball into the net is what I hear a lot. How about you talk to them about, hey, give the ball net clearance. Let's look at a meter net clearance. It's important to give what you want all the time, not what you don't want. So coach the things that you want to see. I'll give you another pearl of wisdom. We've got to water what we want to grow. And you water the things that you want to grow. So if it's, you want positive attitude, you've got to be positive. You've got to be energetic. If you want them to have, really good habits and behaviors, tell them, hey, great warm up you just did. Well done. I love the way you warmed up and the way you went about it, the skipping, the jogging, the TheraBand, outstanding. So you water that habit, and then they continue to do that because they get praise from you all the time. If my daughter does something really well, hey, well done on doing that. Because then she goes, oh, if I want praise from my dad, I've got to do that again. So it's one of those key components of, coaches a lot of the time will say, yeah, good, great shot. Yeah, well done. No, don't do that. Yeah, that's awesome. But what's awesome? It was awesome that you dropped the racket head on the forehand swing to get the ball shape to get lift over the net. So they understand what you're praising them for to continually get praise. And that for me is a really, really important part of, people have to understand what you're praising them for or what you're not happy with. And then they can understand it, and then they can go about, correcting that as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And Gene reinforces that, says, coaches who compliment me on everything need to give me some constructive ideas. Just saying that's good doesn't really teach me how to improve. So exactly right. Exactly. Yeah. So Becky's question. So we should coaches require all players to keep a journal and also record daily, weekly, monthly, short, long-term goals?
Yeah. And That's a super question, because time is a really important part for coaches. Now, the one thing that we don't want to have all the time is have to read hundreds of journals day in, day out as coaches, because we've got enough on our plate. But I think it's important more for the kids' sake, and then also for you as a reference point. So they might write down what they learned in their lesson. They might write down what they did in that previous lesson. So when they come to you the following week, you basically reinforce the messages from last week, and you know where to continue on this week. I see, I'm on court, 8-10 hours a day sometimes, and you can't remember, the 50, 60 hours of coaching you did the previous week or 2 or 3 weeks earlier. So it's important, I think, if they can keep a journal. Now, the hard thing is that if you get players to keep a journal, you as a coach have to be on that journal. And you have to be, okay, let's check your journal, what we did last week. Let's remember what we did. What were your key messages? What were your key points? And I think if we as coaches have good time management skills, it's a great thing to have, because we find our recipe for success.
Love it there, Marc. So as far as, let's see what we got here. As far as your favorite books, because I know, you've learned so much about the game. Do you have any books that you'd recommend, that we read, or ones that you would gift a friend, which basically signifies that they're really, really valuable for us to maybe check out?
Oh, there's a couple of really good ones. One that I utilize, and it's funny because a lot of the books that I really enjoy are not tennis specific. So I hope I don't offend anyone by that. But there's a book called Knowing Yourself and Others. Knowing Yourself and Others. And that's a book by Dr. Phil Jauncey. And that book there probably started my change of the way that I coach and my philosophies around people and how people respond to me. So basically it's a personality book, and how to understand different personalities, how to categorize people in different ways to be able to get the best out of them. And I think as a coach, for me, it's about getting the best out of someone. It's not about me having all the knowledge in the world. It's about me helping someone to achieve their best at all times. And that book there is about personalities. I love that book. There's a few books by Alistair McCaw, who I think has got a lot of great stuff about habits and behaviors. And I think, Alistair's stuff is brilliant. You can see a lot of his stuff online. He's really driving the habits and behaviors of people in the community and on the tennis court or in the sporting field. So he's a great one to look up. And the reason I look at these sort of books more than I look at tennis books is, knowledge can be acquired in tennis, but people are the person you have in front of you is going to be a person much longer than they are a tennis player. So, at the end of the day, we've got to create the right behaviors and habits of people as well as players. And I feel like that's always been my philosophy, is make sure that you leave these people better than you find them. And if you can do that, and it doesn't matter if they, don't be the best tennis player in the world, people love this sport for one reason. It's the sport itself. And if you can learn life lessons from it, it's the most important part about this sport, and why we all choose to play it, because it teaches us so much about life and the journey that we go on. That's right. Tons of life lessons from tennis. And that's why it's great, in general, to play sports, because you learn a lot about hard work and integrity and competitiveness and all these great things, discipline and so forth. Marc, as far as okay, this question is usually fun for me to learn from the coaches and players, and sometimes they get a little stumped, but I think you'll do pretty well, Marc. So, if you got the opportunity to write anything you wanted on a billboard that would be erected on the most trafficked road in, let's say, Melbourne, so many thousands of people would see it per day, what would you write on it? Oh, I think this is the one that, and it's more about life, is treat people the way you would like to be treated. Yeah. And if we can have a society where people are not competing against each other and are there to help one another, which I think the whole COVID-19 process for us in this country especially has been awesome, because people are now appreciating one another. And I think that that's one of the most important parts about life, is that we're not out to compete against the person next to us. We're out to enjoy them, and them competing in terms of tennis wise will make us better anyway. But, treat others how you'd like to be treated. Awesome. Love it. So
I'm scanning to see if you have any other questions, but I'll ask you this, usually the final question that I like to ask my guests, which is, what is one key tip that you can give us to help us improve our games?
Or one key tip is it's not what you do, it's how you do it. So everybody has got an ability to go and practice, but how are you doing that? Everybody can go and warm up, but what intensity are you doing that at? What's the mindset behind it? Everybody can do mindfulness, but are you doing it to the right way in the right present moment? Everybody can do strength and conditioning, but do you chicken out the last set because you're a bit tired and you go out there and go, no, I've got to get to that appointment, I won't do my last set? Or do you do it and really fight through it? Do you stay out for the extra 10 minutes and do the extra 10 minutes of backhand down the line because it didn't finish off well? Or do you just go home and leave it on an error into the net? It's not what you do, it's how you do it. And it's important to become the best you by putting 110% into everything you do.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, today I was listening to a podcast interview with Joe Rogan interviewing Kevin Hart, and Kevin was actually, you know what, I might have been Tim Ferriss, but regardless, Kevin was talking about how he never, he's a different term, but doing things halfway, essentially. I mean, why would you do that to yourself? Then you might as well not even be there. You might as well just do something else that you're more passionate about. So just really put in your full effort, and you don't want to, at the end of your career or life, look back and think that I haven't put all my efforts towards, what I could have potentially accomplished. So really great advice there, Marc. Really appreciate that. And so where can people follow you, maybe on social perhaps, and any other platforms you'd like to shout out?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my name, Marc Sophoulis, it hopefully can come up on your screen there. But, I'm all over Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. You can find me personally anywhere. More than happy to share and happy to have anybody as part of my network. And I love having the more people in my network, the better. And, I love to share my ideas, and hopefully I can teach everybody out there something. I'm obviously, the tennis menu is all over all socials. We're pretty active. We're posting twice a day. The tennis menu is absolutely everywhere. Hopefully we're giving some good content for people to learn. The Melbourne International Tennis School, MITS, one of my sides here. MITS is, where I've grown up, and it's what's shaped me into the person I am, to the coach I am. We're on social media as well, Melbourne International Tennis School, so it's all there. But yeah, I mean, look, feel free to get in contact with me. I mean, I love when I finish these sort of presentations for people to write in, the one key thing that they learn. Type me a private message. What's something that you took from today's session? Because I think it's important that we don't just listen, that we also go and act upon it, like I spoke about before, and that will teach you and reinforce in your mind what the most important learning curve about today was.
Love it, Marc. Well, let me just check out the comments. Oh yeah, Samantha, thank you so much. My pleasure. So our pleasure rather. Awesome. Marc, I just want to thank you again for all your contributions to tennis. And obviously you probably gathered that Marc, he's traveling, obviously not right now, but he travels a lot in general to educate people about the game of tennis, whether that's coaches or players. And he's worked with, so many of the most elite athletes on the planet, as well as amateur players and competitive juniors and so forth. And just want to acknowledge you for all your hard work and passion for the sport, Marc. And it's always a pleasure to connect with you. And it's just amazing again, like you're in Australia, I'm here in Maryland, USA, and it's great that we're able to connect. And I'm hoping that this will happen again soon for us. And I just want to thank you. And for sure, everybody really should just go to the tennismenu.com right now, whether you're listening, live or on the podcast, and check it out and sign up so that you can be notified by Marc and his team when the tennis menu will launch. And I'm really excited for it. And I'm, definitely anticipating, all the great content that's going to come out on several different aspects, all aspects that you need to improve upon. So, Marc, thanks a lot for coming on to the podcast. It's really a pleasure, and really looking forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thank you so much. And thanks for having me on everything that you do. I think it's, great. You're spreading the word in tennis, and thank you for all the people that have been listening today and taking time out of their day or their night, wherever wherever you are, and to be able to listen to this. And tennis is a great sport. It's taught me so many lessons, and I guess hopefully the tennis menu can teach so many people out there our journey and what we've been on as players, coaches, as parents, and we want to give as much as we can. So I do thank you for having me on everything, and I'm more than happy anytime to jump on, and obviously for anybody to connect with me, more than happy to share anything. And I'm a pretty open book, and as you can probably tell, I don't hold back too much. And if anything comes of it, please feel free to get in contact with us.
For sure. And before we end, I just want to mention this. David said that he looked your name up on Amazon and didn't find any books, and thinks that you should definitely write. You're a great communicator. So when are we going to see a book, Marc?
Look, I've been, it's funny he says that, because I've been writing my book actually as we've been going, but it's a very slow process. Just trying to get as many of my coaching ideas and stories that I've had over the past. And I'm not a great writer, so someone needs to probably interpret my Australian slang, but if I can get some ideas on paper, hopefully soon we can have a book out.
Love it. Great to hear. Yeah. And thank you, David. Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Becky, everybody for listening and being on the live version. And thank you, everybody also on the podcast for listening. So Marc, thanks again. We'll talk to you soon, mate, and all the best, and stay safe and healthy.
Thanks, mate. Much appreciated. Thanks to everyone for listening.
All right. Cheers. Thanks, everyone.
All right. I really hope that you enjoyed my interview with Coach Marc Sophoulis. Really great dude and coach with a lot of fantastic insights, and excited that he is going to be on this year's summit, which is going to be starting on April 17th. Registration will open less than a week from when this episode airs. So Monday, April something. April 3rd, I think. So that is when you can go to tennisfallsummit.com and be able to register. Don't do it before then. So really excited about that. Been just working hard the past couple months, pretty much every day, just spending hours on it, and, getting the coaches lined up and the topics, and, soliciting feedback on what you want to hear about. So really excited about that. And really appreciate your support and you listening to the show. And if you do enjoy the podcast, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave a review at tennisfiles.com/Apple Podcasts, the most helpful site to leave reviews for the show. And also would like to leave you with a quote, as I do at the end of each show. And this one is by Marianne Radmacher, I think. And Marianne said, "Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the little voice at the end of the day that says, 'I'll try again tomorrow.'" Love that one. All right. Well, thanks again for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Tennis Files podcast. This is your host, mehrban, signing out.